Hey everyone, I'm your astrologer Brittany of Ethereal Astrology, taking you to new heights with inspired perspectives that transcend the details. Today, you're watching your astrology horoscope for the full moon in the sign of Gemini, which occurs on Monday, November 27th, 2023 at 4:16 a.m. Eastern Time or 1:16 a.m. Pacific Time. Now, what I think is going on here at this full moon in the sign of Gemini here is that we really want to hone in on, I think, some beliefs or understanding about what has recently happened in our lives and why, as well as some new ideas of what we want to pursue next in our lives after some things have recently changed. And we want it so bad that we're actually forming the wrong conclusions here about what has happened in our life and why, and about what our next steps are that I don't even think we're realizing yet here, that can lead to, I think, a lot of confusion later on, especially once Mercury goes retrograde here, and just make us now feel a little bit off here about our situation. That's going on. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. If you want to hear more about that, please do stay tuned, because we're going to hop into it right now. In order to get started though, what I like to do first is just place on the chart what it is I'm going to be referring to in this video so that you can see it and follow along with me. So let me do that now. This video is for that full moon in Gemini on Monday, November 27th, 2023. As a result, I have adjusted my chart accordingly for that lunar event. Okay, I know that because I've got the moon here in the sign of Gemini, making an exact opposition over here to the sun in the sign of Sagittarius at 4 degrees. And when the moon opposes the sun here, that is what is considered a full moon. Okay, and of course the moon's in Gemini, so it's a full moon in Gemini that we're going to be talking about. Okay, what is this about now? Let's get into that. Well, full moons are really all about stepping into something that we have been working towards for quite some time, or bringing things to fruition here because it is halfway throughout the lunar cycle. Hey, what are we trying to step into that we've been working on for a while, or bring to fruition or completion in some sort of way? Gemini, again, because that's the sign that it's in. What is Gemini about here? Well, Gemini here is correlated to Mercury. Mercury is a smaller planet here, and it's about things that are simpler, I would say, or things that are more familiar to us, especially since Gemini has a lot to do with our community, our neighborhoods, things that are closer to home. So that's right there, something we're trying to step into, a simpler lifestyle, or something that is more familiar here to us. Not only that, but because Gemini is about those things, there's also, to me, a sense of feeling more settled, settling on something here that, again, is more familiar to us. I think there's that. Not only that, but other things too about Gemini is that Gemini, to me, being a mutable sign, is one that can be more adaptable, adapting to certain situations, or more flexible. Another thing too about Gemini as well, it is a Mercury ruled sign, which does have to do with the mind and with communication and easier and better thinking and communication here as well. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it for now. That's what I think is going on big picture at this full moon in Gemini. We're really trying to step into a simpler experience of life, an easier one here that feels more familiar and more settled here, where we can adapt to it much easier and have much easier thoughts and conversations here with ourselves and others about what is going on here with us at this time. Okay, now before I move forward to tell you more about this full moon in Gemini and how it's going to play out, and there is a lot that I want to get to here, but before I do that, I do like to go backwards in time for a minute before going forward, to give you more of the context here about how we got here and about why this is now coming up to be felt, lived through, and experienced. Okay, now I have been going back quite far in this section to still the April of 2020 timeframe, right around there. If you are not interested in hearing this again, that's fine. It doesn't upset me at all. You can go ahead and skip ahead in the video. I'll put the timestamps down below in the description box. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hop into the context to help you better understand what's happening. And to do that, I'm going to go back to an alignment that did occur in between January to April-ish of 2020. Okay, what happened around that time is that Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn all came conjunct around the middle to end degrees of the sign of Capricorn. This is a very rare, unusual, and uncomfortable alignment. Rare here because Saturn and Pluto only come conjunct about every 35 years and not always with Jupiter there, okay? And uncomfortable because Saturn and Pluto are involved, which do tend to be more difficult planets here. And Jupiter was in Capricorn, a sign it doesn't like to be in and doesn't function really well, not helping that much here at that time. Hey, what was the rare difficulty? Perhaps that was going on here. Well, this can indicate that there was something in our lives that had started and had been a part of our lives for many decades, right? 35 years, for many decades here, that we did not like with the Saturn and Pluto and felt stuck in, especially with the Saturn here that was going on, and needed to make permanent change, Pluto endings and beginnings, in order to get out of on a large scale with the Jupiter here in order to move forward here at that time. Okay, so that's what happened January to April of 2020. Something in my life I don't like, been going on for a while here. I now need to make big, uncomfortable, permanent changes, endings, especially to get out of that in order to begin better things for me after this point on a large scale. Hey, that then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention, which occurred about 2 years after that, which was going to be about April of 2022. So that was last year. Okay. In April of 2022, we had a new moon solar eclipse here in the sign of Taurus. Okay, that to me was a good thing. New moons are about new beginnings. Solar eclipse is power, superpower that. And Taurus is a lot about fertility here, life, abundance here, and some good things happening with that. So I think what occurred in April of 2022 is that we started to feel like we had made enough changes since 2020 to end things in our life that we didn't like, that we felt stuck in, so that we could now 2022 arrive in a new fertile beginning that felt more abundant, with more possibility and more opportunity here to move forward in a different and better way after that point. Hey, that then leads me now to the next alignment I want to mention, which happened about 2 weeks after that. We're still talking around April of 2022. At that time, we had a full moon lunar eclipse, which was somewhere around here in the sign of Scorpio. Hey, now that was a bit of a challenge here, maybe because it was a full moon. Sometimes full moons can be tougher than new moons, but right, and it was an eclipse, but especially because it was on the south node. Okay, and the south node is difficult because it indicates habits that we're still stuck in here that are no longer useful for us anymore on our journey, and that we need to let go of in order to move forward. So that was difficult 2 weeks later, because we felt like we were in a new experience, but stuck and unable to move forward. And we were stuck and unable to move forward because we had some unhealthy habits that are no longer workable for our new experience. What were those habits that we had that are no longer working that we needed to get rid of? Scorpio, because that's where the south node was at that time. And Scorpio, when negative, which is how I'm interpreting it, because the south node was there. It's not always negative, but the south node was there. Scorpio, when negative, can be too intertwined with other people, what they're doing and how they're doing it, and working with them. Not only that, but Scorpio can tend to spend more money perhaps than it needs to when negative. Not only that, but it can indulge some negative emotions that it's still stung about from the past more than it needs, and indulge in too much change here that we needed to let go of, and let go of in favor of the north node, where the north node was in Taurus, which is a sign that's self-reliant, slower, doesn't make as much change, more stable, more secure, saves money here as well. That's going on, and is more solid emotionally. Okay, so that's what we realized then in a new experience. Better finally ended a lot of old stuff, but stuck when it comes to moving forward in this new experience, because I have a lot of habits that are no longer helpful, which includes being intertwined too much with other people, spending too much money, making too many changes, having a lot of unhealed emotions here that I now need to get rid of so that I can move forward in this better experience. And I need to get rid of and adopt different habits: slow, stable, secure, self-reliant, more secure emotions after this point. Okay, I think that was a challenge here at that time to kind of realize that. Not only do I think that was a challenge, but if I can be honest, I think it took us almost all of last year to fully understand what habits needed to go and release them. I don't think it was actually until the beginning of this year, January of 2024, when that started to occur. And that's because January of 2024 was after Mars had gone retrograde in Gemini about the mindset for the last bit of last year. And it was when Mercury went retrograde here in the sign of Capricorn over that same spot that Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto came conjunct in the years prior of 2020. Okay, and that was in January of 2024. Okay, what do I think happened then? Well, I think in January 2024, we finally, at that Mercury retrograde, started to adjust our mindset, Mercury, to stop intertwining with other people, spending money, making crazy change, and to be more slow, stable, secure, self-reliant, and thrifty. Not only that, but I think we also, Mercury, adjusted our physical environment, especially with the Capricorn influence, including relationships and money, to be more stable, secure, thrifty, and alignment with our needs and values here, and make some, decisions, right, and adjustments here that were necessary in order for us to move forward, okay, which I thought was needed. Okay, and because we did that, that then leads me now to the next alignments that I want to mention, which occurred about a month or two later. I think it was like February or March. Maybe I'll say it was like March, maybe, of earlier this year, 2024. March of this year, we had two significant alignments happen around the same time. Pluto left the sign of Capricorn to enter the sign of Aquarius, where it has never been in our lifetimes here, and Saturn also left the sign of Aquarius and entered the sign of Pisces. Now, when this happens, two slower moving planets, which is what these are, change signs, they do indicate major chapter changes in our lives, totally different experiences and stories coming into the equation, especially with Pluto and Aquarius that we feel are more authentic to us, better for our future, and with the Saturn and Pisces that we feel is going to help us to release the past and things that are no longer working for us. So in March 2024, armed with the right perspective, slow, stable, secure, thrifty, self-reliant, we felt ready once again to enter a new, different, and better experience of life, more authentic, that we've been trying to get to in the years prior, okay, to move forward with that here that was going on, okay. That then leads me now to the next alignment here that it is that I want to mention happening around April also of this year, 2024. Around April of this year, 2024, we then had a new moon solar eclipse here at the last degree of Aries. Okay, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, also about new beginnings. So is a new moon, so is a solar eclipse, big ones here. So in April of 2024, we definitely felt more ready to move forward yet again, to try again, another time, to move into these new beginnings in a very significant way. But as time went on after April of 2024, we then started to run into problems yet again with this new experience of life. And that's because of the next alignment that I want to mention, which was Mars. Mars entering pre-retrograde shadow and going retrograde here in the sign of Leo a little bit later. Is that around May or June of this year, 2024. Okay, and that made us feel stuck and unable to move forward. Why? Because Mars is about action, and when it's moving retrograde, it's making us hard to move forward into this new beginning yet again for a second time. The second time we're still stuck here. That I think was a challenge. Why were we stuck and unable to move forward here? Well, I think we were stuck and unable to move forward because with Mars and Leo, we were not in touch with our heart. Leo has to do with our heart, our passions, which you can consider an emotion, things that make us feel happy and joyful in life. I think we found it difficult to move forward because we weren't in touch with that and had been stuck in emergency mode for a very long time, especially since 2020 when we were trying to escape these things we didn't want to escape, right? And it's hard to move forward doing things you enjoy if you don't know what your heart wants or are ignoring it. Okay, that was a big problem here. And because that was a big problem, we then realized a month or two later, around June to July of this year, 2024, here, when Pluto squared the nodal axis here back from Capricorn, we then realized that we had to make a very big Pluto change, permanent change in the structure of our lives here and decisions about that, to honor more of our emotions and our heart and our passions and our feelings, and bring more of those into the equation to come to bear in our situation, so that we weren't stuck in emergency mode and could actually live in alignment with who we truly are. And I think that was scary, but we started to do it, so to speak, here in the ways that we need. And because we started to do that around June, July of this year, we then, a month ago now, what was that, October, at the full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus here, then started to feel like we were more in alignment now with our new beginning, with what our new beginning needs, with what's important to it here, and with our whole self here, in order to bring more things together here. And we made a few more changes, especially a month ago at that new moon. A month ago, we started to make more changes here to adjust more things in our life to be even more stable, more secure, and more solid with relationships and money for this new beginning. And because very recently we have done that, honored our emotions, felt more in alignment with who we truly are, and adjusted more things to be stable and secure for our new experience, we now, at this full moon in Gemini, of which this video is for, are trying to get used to that, trying to settle into this different experience of life that is more aligned with our needs and values, and where we do have a better shot to feel happier in a different experience. Not only are we trying to feel more settled with that experience, I think we're also trying to adapt to it a little bit more and adjust to it here and enjoy it a little bit more and think and communicate about it in an easier way without feeling so stressed and so burdened by all these other, heavy considerations that we've been dealing with over the course of the past few weeks, months, and years. Okay, and that's it. That's all I'm going to say for now. That was a lot. Because that's it, I'm now just going to repeat that very briefly without the astrological jargon, so you can get the context here simply. So let me do that now. What I think is the bigger picture here of this full moon in Gemini, of which this video is for, is that we're trying to adapt more now to a different and better experience of life here that is more aligned with our needs and values, and more stable and secure here, so that we can feel more at ease in this experience and have an easier time just thinking and communicating about it here as we move forward. Okay, that's going on. All right. And that's it. Because that's it, I'm now going to move forward here into this full moon in Gemini to give you more specific details about this full moon in Gemini, what it's about, and how it may play out as we move onward. So I'm going to do that, and to start doing that, I'm just going to place on the chart really quickly here the full moon again. Okay, we've got the sun here in Sagittarius making an opposition to the moon in Gemini, the full moon. Okay, that's what we've got here about as trying to settle into a different and better experience of life after making some changes to get here and it being more stable and secure. The first alignment now that I want to point out is going to be the fact that this full moon is opposite Mars here, and that of course Mars is conjunct the sun in the sign of Sagittarius. So I want to look at that. What is this now? This is a bit of a difficult alignment here that's going on. This is a bit of a difficult alignment here because Mars can be a bit of a challenge. Mars can be a bit of a challenge here because it is a bit of an aggressive planet, known for being the planet of war or of action. So this can be a bit of a challenging one. Okay, not only is this difficult because Mars can sometimes be that way, a bit aggressive here, but also too because this is an opposition, and an opposition is technically known as a hard aspect. So when we get a hard aspect, of course, I'm going to interpret Mars in a more harsh way here, regardless. So this to me is a bit difficult here. What is the difficulty? All right, well, we've got Mars here in the sign of Sagittarius. Again, Mars can be a bit aggressive because it's the planet of action. It likes to do things and push things to happen here. That's going on, and it's in the sign of Sagittarius, okay? Sagittarius has to do with a few things. It can do with new circumstances manifesting, right? Especially as a result of some recent changes that we've made in our lives. Not only can it have to do with that, but Sagittarius is a lot about our belief systems, how we understand and make sense of our current experience and the past, what has or has not happened in the past. Not only is Sagittarius about that, but it also too can be about new and different things yet to come in our lives. What's next that we haven't done before here that might be good for us. And Mars is going to have us pushing for that a lot, right? There's a lot of new things from the past, the dust still settling that hasn't fully settled yet. There's a lot of big questions in our mind trying to figure out what we believe about what's happened in our lives and what's gone right and what's gone wrong. And there's a lot of ideas here about new things that potentially we could do after this point. Okay. And that can be a bit agitating here. Why is that agitating? Okay, well, let's think of the moon in Gemini, right? Because that's where it's opposing, this full moon in Gemini. Gemini wants to settle down here on some things or focus on a few things here and to make them more familiar. Well, it's hard to settle on a few things and adjust to those and make them more familiar if there's still a lot of stuff going on. The dust has to settle from the past. And if there's a lot of beliefs that you're trying to have in your mind that you're trying to form that you haven't formed yet fully. And it's hard to settle down too when you've got a lot of new ideas that are just ideas and they haven't actually happened yet either. So I think that there is some frustration here that's going on. Okay. For some frustration, hard for me to settle down because a lot of new stuff still happening, a lot of new stuff I want yet to occur, and a lot of beliefs about what's happened I'm still trying to figure out. Okay, not only can this create a lot of frustration here, hard to feel settled, this can also create to pressure. You know, Mars are going to push things and impatience. It can also create a lot of pressure and impatience to figure it out now. I want everything to be set now. I want answers now about why this happened to me in the past and about what to make of this. I want to know now what I'm going to do next and how it's going to happen here. That is going on. So it can create a lot of difficulty there, frustration, impatience, which sometimes I need to note can translate into anger. Here, Mars can do that. Now, I should note, I do see Sagittarius and Gemini as more optimistic signs than maybe some of the others here, since they are mutable. So I don't know if I would see quite as bad arguments as we might see in some of the fixed signs here, but I definitely can sense some sort of frustration and tension here that can be going on, or debates, you know, with yourself, with others, that can be a bit annoying, I think, at this time. Okay, not only is that happening, but now I'm going to move on to another alignment here. And another alignment that's going on with this full moon is that it is making a square to Saturn over here in the sign of Pisces. And not only is the moon squaring Saturn in Pisces, but you need to note so too is the sun, of course, because the sun's connected to the moon and the full moon, but also the Mars that we were just talking about. Okay, this is very difficult here. This is difficult as well because it's a square, of course, two squares we've got going on at once, and it's Saturn, and Saturn can also be difficult as well since it is a little bit of a planet that's further out, and it's Saturn, which is known for being tough and a little bit more restrictive here. So this can be a bit of a challenge. Okay, what is the challenge? Well, Saturn, again, can bring blockages and restrictions and slow things down. Okay, and Mars, of course, which is a part of this equation, it doesn't like that. It doesn't want to be slowed down. It wants to move fast. It wants to get things done now. Here, that's going on. So this can be hard. We can feel stuck and slowed down, especially when it comes to the Sagittarius, understanding here what's going on in our lives and what is happening. Understanding what we want to do that's new and next, and letting some of the dust settle from the past. It can make that feel hard. Like we're getting some ideas, right? Like some things are settling down, you know, and figuring things out. And like we're getting some ideas about our beliefs and what to make. And like we're figuring some new things out about what's next, but that we're not figuring them all out. We're not getting all of the answers here that it is that we might like. And of course, frustrated because we can't feel at ease and as flexible as we might like with the Gemini, and as focused on a few things that we might want to settle on and adapt to here. So this is also a bit hard. Trying to bring this together so far. trying to settle down in a different experience of life that's more stable and secure and adapt to it and get used to it and think more easily and clearly, but really struggling to settle in this different and better experience because I'm still trying to figure out what the hell just happened in my life and what it all means. And I'm still trying to figure out what to do next now that this has occurred. And because there's still a few things going on, that's making it hard to feel settled. And because while I am getting some answers about what has happened in my life and what to do next and how to organize this, I still haven't gotten all the answers. And I still feel stuck and restricted when it comes to getting answers and settling down. And I don't want to be. I want to move forward. I want to move forward. I want to get these answers. That can be very frustrating here at this time and make us feel uncertain of what to do. Okay, that then leads me now, to the next alignment that I want to mention, which isn't an exact aspect to this full moon, but is happening at the same time of it and is therefore relevant. And that is going to be Mercury here in the sign of Sagittarius, making a square over here to Neptune in the sign of Pisces here exact at this full moon. Now, this is also a big challenge. Okay, this is a big challenge as well because Mercury has just entered a pre-retrograde shadow here in the sign of Sagittarius here, which is a difficult thing, meaning it's slowing down, getting ready to go retrograde on December 13th. Okay, not only is it difficult because of that, but because Mercury is in Sagittarius, a sign it doesn't like to be in and doesn't function that well in. It's also difficult too because it's a square, which is a hard aspect, and because Neptune is involved, which is an outer planet, and therefore more difficult for us to understand. So difficult any way you cut it here, and has extra importance because this Mercury is the ruler of the full moon, right? The full moon's in Gemini. Gemini is a Mercury ruled sign. It's going to become more into focus and more into the equation here that's going on. This is a big challenge here, okay? What is the challenge? Well, when Mercury is in pre-retrograde shadow, all right, let's focus on that for a minute here in Sag. What that means is that it's not retrograde yet, but it's slowing down, about to go retrograde here eventually. And when a planet is slowing down, about to go retrograde eventually, what happens is all of the themes that the Mercury retrograde is going to be about start to download and start to come to us here about all the things that aren't right and that need to be reworked. However, they do it in a very subconscious way. Usually we aren't aware of the issues until the planet actually goes retrograde, which in this instance won't be till December 13th. Here. So there starts to be something that's not right here, and that's not working the way that we might like, or isn't being done to the healthiest and highest degree here at this time, especially with, again, Mercury being in Sagittarius, a sign it doesn't like to be in, and that square to Neptune. Neptune, I need to note as well, can also bring illusions, right? Illusions, not seeing things for what they are, thinking you know something when you really don't. Here, that can also be very hard. What is the problem here that is starting to occur that we're not seeing yet? We're not seeing clearly yet, or at least consciously is going on, okay? Well, Mercury is in the same sign as Mars and the Sun in Sagittarius, which is causing some of the problem that we talked about earlier with the Mars alignment here. Okay, Sagittarius is a lot about belief systems, forming beliefs about what we believe, about what happened in our lives in the past and why we got here. It's also as well about what we do next in our lives after this point. And what I think can happen here is that this can make us form the wrong conclusions, the wrong belief systems about why things did or did not go right in the past here, or the wrong conclusions about what we need to do next in our lives after this point here that we may not be aware of here, and maybe fooling ourselves about here at this time and may not be seeing here. And we may be forming the wrong conclusions about what happened in our lives and why and what we want to do next. Because remember, the Mars is impatient because we want answers. We want answers. We want now. We want to know now what's going on next in our lives. We want to feel settled. We want everything happen now, so we can take shortcuts and form conclusions that really aren't the best just to make us feel better in the moment here about our situations. Here that is going on. Okay, Now, I want to emphasize this, do I think we know what conclusions we're forming are wrong? No, I think a lot of us convinced we're right. No, this is the right thing for my situation. I think a lot of us are convinced we're right, and it won't reveal itself until December 13th that something's not right, when Mercury actually goes retrograde here. But if some of you aren't convinced 100% that you think you're right, then what also can happen here, Neptune can bring this weird intuitive sense that something's off, something's not right, something's hazy here that's going on. So if this isn't you forcing conclusions here to situations and beliefs that really aren't the accurate or the best that you can have about your situation, then it can have you deep down just feeling like something's not right. You don't know what it is when it comes to your life and your future and what you want to do next, but just something's not right here that you're not conscious of, that can also just feel a bit uncomfortable and wear away at you, making you feel listless or maybe sad. Sometimes the Neptune can go sad or nostalgic or tired with the Neptune, or just overwhelmed here about the whole situation. Okay. So do you see? No. One more alignment I want to mention after this, but do you see here? Trying to settle into a different and better experience of life and adapt to it and adjust to it and have it be easier and simpler to work with and communicate about. And that really hard for us to do, and hard for us to be at ease in a different and better experience of life here, because maybe there's still some things that we're still dealing with from the past, and because we're still trying to figure out and understand what happened and why it happened here, and we're trying to figure out our next steps here that's going on, which makes it hard to settle down. And while we are getting some answers about what to do next and why it'll happen, we're not getting the full answers here that we need. And instead of being patient and waiting here to get the answers on their own time, we get impatient. We start to force. Because we're feeling stuck, we start to force answers and force conclusions about what happened in our lives and what's next that aren't the most highest and best for our situation here at this time, that we may not even see is happening because we're so frustrated and upset here that's going on. Or if we do kind of sense it's happening, won't know for sure what it is, and may just feel off and restless and tired and exhausted. And that then leads me now to the next and the last alignment I'm going to mention here at this time, which is going to be Venus coming into a conjunction with the South Node here in the sign of Libra. Okay, this is also a bit difficult. This is a difficult full moon. Okay, this is difficult here because it's a planet conjunct the South Node, and the South Node is hard because the South Node is really a point of release of habits that we have that are not working for us anymore, or no longer necessary anymore, that we need to let go of. And it's hard to let go of habits that you've been holding on to for a while, or that you've had for a while. So this can be a very difficult alignment here. What habits may we have had for a while that we don't want to let go of, that we're still kind of indulging in here? Well, Libra is an air sign, right? We've got the full moon in Gemini. We've got Mercury here in this hard spot. The air signs like to think more, think harder, think longer. Libra too, the scales, it's about weighing out facts, weighing out information, trying to take in more, especially at the full moon in Gemini, trying to take in more facts and more information. So what this can have us doing here is trying to think more, longer, and harder about our situation, because we want answers now about what happened in our life and why and what we want to do next. And because something is kind of right, but kind of not, it can have us spinning our wheels. Well, let me just think more and harder. Maybe if I think more and harder and take in more facts and more information here, it will help me get the answers about why this is happening in our lives and why this is happening next, which really, again, South Node is not useful. More information, more thinking doesn't mean better thoughts, doesn't mean better conclusions here about our situation. And that, I think, is actually contributing to us kind of spiraling downwards here more and indulging actually in more negative conclusions, or just unhelpful conclusions here about our situation and about what's going on. Okay. Okay. So do you see? So maybe, should I repeat that? I'm like trying to decide. I want to give you the advice. That's really what I want to do. So maybe I'll go there. So what now is the advice here in this situation? And then I'll repeat that I want to give you about what's going on. Well, I think part of the advice that I want to give you about how to handle this difficult full moon is going to be back to that Venus South Node, right? The South Node is about letting things go, even though they feel comfortable. And the Venus in Libra is a lot about thinking, weighing out facts, weighing out more information. I think part of the advice that I want to give you is that stop thinking as much here about your situation and about what you need to do next here that's going on, because, that's not going to help. Again, more thoughts doesn't mean better thoughts. You have everything you currently need, at your disposal, and you already have the information, the answers that you need. You don't have to go getting it. So I think that that's part of the advice, is stop thinking so much. You have, especially with the Gemini, you have more at your disposal than you think you do here, and you're in a better place than you think you are. Not only is the advice to stop thinking, but I think another piece of advice that I want to give you, especially with Mercury and pre-retrograde shadow, which it hasn't gone retrograde yet, is patience. We need the whole Mercury retrograde really to figure out here what we don't see correctly, and to correct, some of our ideas, and in this case, some of our beliefs about things too here. And Mercury's not going to start going retrograde until December 13th, and it's not really going to end its retrograde until the beginning of January. So I think another piece of advice here is not only like stop thinking so much here about your situation here, and be patient, as these answers come, because sometimes it's just a matter of time, when you don't know something, sometimes you just need time in order to, figure things out here that's going on. Not only is that another piece of advice that I want to give you, but maybe I will give you some advice here based on the full moon in Gemini. Gemini to me is a little bit more of a playful sign here, being correlated to twins, in a lot of ways. So I think another piece of advice that I want to give you is to just have fun with it here, to just have fun with the situation that's going on, and to, how do I want to say it, to be okay in the in-between, maybe that's a separate thought, because Gemini has to do with the twins. One twin believes one thing, another twin believes another, and the duality can exist together. So I think that's another piece of advice here. Not only stop trying to think about all this stuff here, because it's just going to take you further away from the moment and the present and the solution, and be patient here that's going on. And while you're being patient, just enjoy life, just enjoy the little things in life here that is going on, and be okay with the duplicity, be okay with not knowing, or knowing some things and not knowing others here that's going on, because I think that here is going to help you. Okay, another thought that I want to give you too is not only the advice, but what is the eventual conclusion, say come January, when Mercury goes direct here, that we're going to land on here. What is the correct conclusion about what's happening in our lives and why, and what needs to be done next here? Well, I think in some ways that conclusion that we're eventually going to need to land on come January is also going to have somewhat of Gemini traits here. And I think it's going to have somewhat of Gemini traits because when a planet goes retrograde, this is just my opinion, I believe it pulls more of the opposite sign as being useful and helpful to bring it into balance here in the ways that it really needs. Okay, and Mercury's going retrograde. It's going to start in Capricorn, but it's going to come back to to Sagittarius here, and the opposite of Sagittarius, right, is Gemini, where that full moon is. And Gemini is, to me, a sign that's a little bit simpler. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, big. It's a big planet. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, a very small planet here that's going on. I think what we're going to realize here come January is that some of the ideas that we have now, they're too big. They're too big, small. We need smaller ideas here that's going on, and we need to start thinking smaller here about our situation. Why? Well, how are big things accomplished? Through small steps here. And also too, because a lot of the big stuff has already been done since 2020. A lot of the big stuff has already been done, and it's starting to become time for a lot of little things, to get a lot of little things together now, the finishing touches here, in order for us to move forward. Not only do I think that's the conclusion that we need to come to and are going to come to come January. But I think another conclusion we're going to come to in January is that we need to work work more with what we have here instead of getting new things, more new this, more learning of that, more studying of that. No. I think also what we need time to understand come January here is that we have enough at our disposal and we don't need to keep doing more new, different things. We just need to use what we have, right? Especially because Sagittarius is the sign of travel, traveling to new places, new frontiers. And in Gemini is about your community, closer to home, closer to what you know, closer to what's more familiar to you here. Another thing as well that I think we also are going to need to realize, that's the whole point of this retrograde, and are going to come to realize with in January as well, that needs to happen here, is that we need to start, how do I want to say this, is that we come January, we need to realize that life doesn't have to be so heavy. Come January, we need to realize that, maybe to put it in another way, there are some things in life that just that'll never make sense, or that we'll never have answers to until we're older, or till later in life, or until we pass away or on the other side. So I think another thing that we need to learn come January here, that we're trying to learn that we don't have yet, is that there's some things we'll just never know in life, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean we can't live. That doesn't mean we can't do things, but to understand that that's okay, and that that's what makes life more interesting in some respects. Especially, again, because Sagittarius is about our belief systems, as to where Gemini is more open to different ideas and things like that. Okay, that's going on. So I think that's another thing that I wanted to say here. We don't really know what to make of our situation and what we're going to do next. And the way to handle that is not to force ideas, force next thing, force beliefs. No, stop thinking, put it on the back burner, be patient, have fun. Okay, give it time. Because that's going to help you so that you aren't so angry and stressed. And it's going to teach you something very important come January. And it's going to teach you something very important come January, which is that you don't need to have the answers to everything. You don't need to have it all figured out. There are some things in life we're just not going to know. And you need to stop trying to do new, more big things and think smaller and simpler and work more with what you have, because that's what's needed now. The big stuff has been done the past few years. Okay, that's going on. All right, and that's it. That's all I'm now going to say in terms of the interpretation here in the aspects. Because of that, I'm now just going to repeat all of that here one last time without the astrological jargon, so you can get a different, better idea of what I think is happening. So let me do that. What I think is going on here at this full moon in Gemini is that we are trying to adapt, I think, to a new, different, and better experience of life that is more stable, secure, and in alignment with ourselves and our emotions here, that's recently come into the picture, and to have an easier and more flexible time thinking and communicating about it. Okay, and that's a very good thing to want to do and try to do. But even though that's a very good thing, we're having difficulty settling into and adapting and being at ease in this different experience. And that's because here we're having difficulty understanding what has recently happened in our lives in the past and why, and what needs to be done next after this point, especially when there may still be some things going on here at this time. Here we're having difficulty getting the full and complete understanding, and are feeling stuck here and maybe trapped in some kind of way. And instead of us being okay with the fact that we don't have all of the answers to things, I think we get frustrated and upset and angry and impatient here, and try to force answers and conclusions about what has happened in our lives and why and what's next before we're really ready here in our situation. And because we're forcing answers and conclusions about what to believe and what's next, we're actually settling on the wrong conclusions, the wrong belief systems, the wrong ideas about our situation and what to do next, that I don't think we're conscious of is happening at all. And we think we're justified, or if we are a little aware, we just feel off about here deep down inside. And because we're forming the wrong conclusions and think we're right, or because we're feeling a little off about the conclusions we are forming, instead of us relaxing, we continue to overthink and to double down and to overthink in our situation, which just makes matters even worse. And because that's what's going on here, that's very hard. I want to give you some advice, and the advice on how to deal with this full moon here is to really stop thinking about what's going on and what to do next in your life, and stop trying to get answers here about your situation, and to just be patient and give it some more time, especially in January, before you understand what happened and hone in on ideas about what's next. Not only is that the advice to stop thinking, to be patient, but to also just try your best to just enjoy the moment and just enjoy the process and just have fun with whatever is going on around you. Because I think if you can do that, it's going to make you less frustrated and less angry through your situation and less likely to form the wrong conclusions. Not only that, but I think it's also as well going to help you come January get some very important realizations, and get some very important realizations here that there are some things in life you're just never going to have the answers to, at least not until later or after death. Here, not only are you going to learn in January that there are just some things in life you're never going to get the answers to, and that's okay, but to stop thinking so big and to think smaller and simpler here, because the big stuff has already been done here, and because you already have what you need at your disposal, and to use more simple things that you already have instead of trying to go out and get more new, bigger things here at this time, which I think is meant to be helpful. Okay, and that's it. Okay. I'm going to get my tarot deck ready. I didn't take it out before the video, but this is what we're going to use today. Okay. So that's what I'm going to say there. We really, maybe to put it in a simpler way, we really want to know why what's happened to us in the past has happened to us, and what's next, and what we can do next with it. And we do not know. And that's frustrating to us and angering us and making us feel stuck. So we're trying to force answers to why it happened and what's next that aren't accurate and that aren't really what needs to happen here without us realizing it, which is going to create a problem later on. And we're doubling down on that, trying to overthink, which is hard. Okay. We have to loosen up and give it a break, Why do we need to loosen up and give it a break? I maybe another thought here. I like to add just some random thoughts here. Maybe another thought, the past 3 years since 2020, if you listen to that early part of the video with the context, have been very big and very significant with a lot of big alignments. And I think a very rare time, especially with that Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, right? And after you've had a lot of very big, significant things go on in your life and heavy things, you just need time to adjust. And I think you need time to let it all go, to let it all go, to kind of detach, to let it all go so that the new can start, and I think that's kind of what is trying to happen here, all of Mercury retrograde, which hasn't started yet, but it's in pre-retrograde shadow now, from like now to January, is that we're trying to come down off of these big, huge, catastrophic events in our lives and the heaviness of them, and just let it go, and just let it go, so that we can emerge lighter, with the Gemini, light on the feet, lighter next January, easier, more playful, more simpler, and have an easier time of doing things. So that's really why. And any of the conclusions that we may form before we let all of the catastrophic baggage, bigness from the past few years go, any conclusions that we form here before we let all of that go are going to be based on the old stuff. It's got to be big. It's got to be heavy. It's got to be all of this, and not formed on a simpler, smaller approach here. We got to think smaller, think lighter, think simpler. It's not going to be based on that. And sometimes that just needs time. That's something you can't really force. Sometimes you just need distance, time and distance between what's happened in order to let the dust settle. Okay. And maybe I need to say this, because what needs to happen after this point now, okay, is not big, bold, huge changes in our perspective and in relationships and money. What needs to happen after this point? Little tweaks. Simple, easy, especially next year when Jupiter enters Gemini, where the full moon is here. So we need to stop thinking huge, big, heavy, hard. Everything doesn't have to be huge, big, heavy, hard like it was the past few years. It can now be smaller, simpler, easier, using what you have. And it is going to be, and that's what's needed next. And that's what we're trying to transform into for especially next year. Okay. Next year is not the year of big, crazy change. next year is the year of little tiny tweaks, a little tiny here, a little tiny there, little this there, little finishing touch here. That's it. Don't need big things here. We got to understand that. Okay, can be simpler. All right, I think that's all I'm going to say there, because that's all I'm going to say there. Do I want to give examples? I don't know if that was clear enough. Sure. Yeah, let me give some examples. Maybe I should, because I do feel like weirdly that was complicated. Mercury is in pre-retrograde shadow, which can, make everything more complicated with the way I'm communicating or the way you're understanding it or whatever. So maybe I'll give you some examples. Maybe what's happened for a lot of you recently is that you've recently changed your job in a very significant way over the course of the past few years. We're talking since 2020 or so, and you've recently changed your job to be in a very different field or to maybe own your own business of some sort. And so maybe what might be happening now is that some of you might really be trying to process this new job or business that you have, and of like why you have it and how you got here and what it all means. And with this job, like why this job, why this business and not another one? Why didn't all the other ones work out? Why is this the one? And trying to figure out like, what do I do now? Now that I have a business, what do I do next? Now that I'm in this new job, what's my next career path? What's my next move at my job? Here, that's going on. And in that instance, some of you may form the wrong conclusions, about why you got here, may form the wrong conclusions. You may say, oh, well, now I'm, in this different job because all the other ones didn't work and no one liked me at my other jobs. And really that has nothing to do with it at all. It was something else entirely. Or you may form your next steps when it comes to your business. Oh, well, I need to market this or I need to do that, when really it's not what you need to do next with your business. It's something else entirely here that's going on. But you're forming, the wrong conclusions because the past has been so hard or so heavy or so big here. And you need to give yourself time to think smaller. Right? And the conclusions you're making are too big and you need to think smaller and really simpler and easier, Who cares why you got here, where you are? You're here now, like that's the Gemini. Who cares you're here now? What you need to do next, you don't need to go back to school and do all this 500 stuff. You just need a few tweaks, it's like, it doesn't have to be a big thing. Thinking too big, I think smaller. Maybe there's a situation with relationships here. Maybe what's recently happened is that some of you have changed either your current relationship to be something more in alignment with you, or have just started seeking out different types of partners in relationships than you normally would here. Well, a lot of you can right now with this full moon in Gemini be trying to understand, well, why did all my other relationships go wrong? And why is this the type of partner that I'm here with now? Or why did we have to make this change in this current relationship in this way? And also now, well, what do I do next? Now that I'm attracted to different partners, or now that my relationship is different, what do I do next? And some of you could be drawing the wrong conclusions here about that, about why this had to happen here with this partner and about what the two of you need to do next. And I think the wrong conclusions that you're drawing are possibly too negative here, and your next steps are too big. Oh, well, now that I've got this new partner, or this new way of doing relationships, we need to go big. It needs to be big and deep and intense and all that. And really, it's like small, Who knows why, right? Who knows why it happened, right? There's the part of it. It's like, you're never going to know the answer. Who knows why you got here in a relationship? Doesn't really matter. Probably doesn't. You're here now. And when it comes next to this new type of person you want to date, it doesn't need to be a big ordeal. You just date little by little. You just take one small step. You just call them on the phone. You just send them a text. You just hang out. It doesn't have to be, all these big, intense moves to hang out 24/7 and get married right away. Like there's something there that needs to go on, It could be a health situation. Maybe some of you have had really challenging health situations that you've been overcoming. And maybe what's happening now at this full moon is you're trying to understand why. Why did my health get so bad? Why did this happen? Why did I let it happen? Why didn't any of my doctors diagnose it and know what was going on? It could be that. And you can figure out, well, what do I do next? Now that my health is better, what do I do next to ensure this doesn't happen again? And some of you could be making some of the wrong conclusions here when it comes to why your health got to be the way it was and what you need to do next here. And these conclusions could be wrong because it could be based on the past, fear from the past, negativity from the past, big, scary change from the past, and they could be too big. You know, oh, what I need to do now with my health, big change everything, change every medicine here, change everything, you know, that I've got here, change all my diet here. Too big. You don't need a lot of big, you know, for big changes with your health. You need just a lot of little small tweaks. That's it. You know, and a lot of little small tweaks will get you to where you need to go. And why did this happen to you, right? Gemini, you're never going to know. We're never going to know for sure why this happened and why it didn't. You know, sometimes things just happen, and that you have to accept that, you know, and move on from there. And so I think that that's where we're trying to get at, just to give you a few examples. Forming wrong conclusions about why you got here and where to go next. And the conclusions are wrong because they're too big and too negative here about your next steps and about what happened. Too big and too negative. Okay? And you need to change the too big and too negative to be smaller and simpler and easier, and to be okay with not knowing everything. Or you're not going to know everything. It's okay. Okay? And that's, you know, maybe also think about it in another way, is that that's also a thing, you know, that also tends to happen around the end of the year and the new year, right? Everyone around the new year, you always hear, I had to set my New Year's resolutions. And then a lot of times people don't keep their New Year's resolutions. You know, well, why may you not keep your New Year's resolutions? Well, first of all, because the new year starts in Capricorn season. Let's be real here. When the beginning of the zodiac is Aries season in April at the equinox. Okay, so that's part of the reason why. But another part of the reason why here is because the year starts near Capricorn season, which is not astrological at all, and the way things work, the lead up to the new year is Sag season, right? And Sagittarius is very big, and it's hard to take steps on big ideas, right? You have to think simpler. So maybe just to put it another way, right? If all this other stuff was confusing for you, if some of you have New Year's resolutions that you're trying to plan now, I want to lose weight next year, I want to move home next year, I want to do all this with work next year with my business, I want to improve my health, like whatever it is for you here, you got to think smaller. You have to think smaller here and work with what you have and make smaller resolutions here, and keep it simple and lighthearted. Okay, because I think that's going to be better than these big ideas, especially because the big stuff has already been done the past few years. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at your inside degrees here. The inside degrees were not written by me. They were written by someone else named Elias Lonsdale, who channeled the meanings of each of these from Spirit. But I like to take a look at these just to give a different perspective. Okay, so I've got these up on the screen. Now, before I read some of these, I'm going to tell you I'm not a huge fan of some of these for the interpretation here. And the reason why I'm not a huge fan of some of these degrees in particular is not because there's anything wrong with these degrees or Elias Lonsdale's work. I love his work. It's why I always mention it here. But because Mercury is about to go retrograde. And I find that when Mercury is about to go retrograde, I just don't always prefer the degree of the full moon. I prefer the degree for Mercury, for where Mercury is going to go retrograde and station and all of that. So I just want to note that here, but we'll just look at one or two anyways, just so you can kind of see. Okay. Which one do I want to look at? Okay. Maybe I'll look at 5, right? The full moon's at 4. I'm going to look at 5 degrees Gemini, and then I'm going to switch over to Mercury retrograde and the degree it entered pre-retrograde shadow. So let's do this here. I've got Gemini 5 up on the screen, although feel free to read 3 and 4 because they can also have meanings for you personally. I'm going to look at 5. 5 says, consciousness flagrantly and outrageously running off to infinity with all that is happening. You are always able to take anything further, to follow things out beyond boundaries and limits, synchronized with multidimensionality, coming upon the future everywhere, blown so wide open that all you can do is exclaim, marvel, and alternate between rapture and despair. High strung and wildly strong. Okay, so let's stop there. One of the first things that these few sentences says to me is that at this full moon in Gemini, we've got a lot of ideas here about our life and what we want to do next, and we're all over the place. You know, so many ideas here that we're running wild with what's going on. Okay, you know, about why it's happened, about what we're doing next. Okay. Then it continues, engaged with all outstanding possibilities, but hopeful and equally doubtful, yearning towards a world where everyone can be free, vividly impressed by a world where the chains prevail, caught in the crossfire between the old and the new. So we go from the beginning of this degree of like tons of new ideas about our lives and what could happen to now we're starting to become caught between old ways here and the new ideas, and starting to doubt the new ways or the different way things need to be done here. Depending upon ingenuity and resourcefulness to each and every time open the space, stir the pot, and cover something dynamic and progressive in every corner. Just asking to be rallied, championed, and brought further along in the mix. We were taken together with never a dull moment, nor any entirely closed door anywhere in sight. So I think that's all that says to me, if I can be honest. We're getting tons of new ideas about what's happened, what we want to do next. They're all very exciting, but even though they're all very exciting, we're still kind of caught in the crosshairs of like old ideas and old beliefs that we maybe don't know what to do with. Here, that's going on, okay? I agree somewhat with that, okay, for the most part. I think the thing that maybe is a little hard for me is that I feel like this degree is a little more forward oriented, of like new ideas and beginnings, as to where to me the chart is a little more backwards oriented, still stuck in old things with Mercury about to go retrograde and of course Venus on the south node, and not as hopeful. Not only is that my problem I have with this degree, is that it seems more optimistic, and there's something frustrating about this full moon. It's square Saturn, it's opposite Mars. There's something more frustrating and a little more restricting, okay? So that's why it's not my favorite, even though I think there is a theme of like new ideas, but still stuck in the old. Okay, so that's what I want to say there. The next thing that I want to look at is going to be the degree of Mercury, where Mercury entered pre-retrograde shadow, which is the degree it's going to come back to retrograde and station direct, because I think that can be more relevant, and that's going to be 22 degrees Sagittarius. And that to me, I think is a more accurate vibe for the energy. So we're going to look at that. It says 22 degrees Sagittarius, darkness seeks release by the right vessel at the right time in the right place. You must be able to contain the darkness and to form it into an exquisitely sculpted out seething chaos, and then discover your willingness and ability to reverse field, to give over the very thing you took as your own. Right? And that to me is more accurate, or maybe combining them together. Like I like that. I can get on board with the 5 degrees Gemini in combination with the 22 degrees Sagittarius, right? We're getting new ideas about our life and what we want to do next and how we want to do it, but we're still kind of stuck into old things. Darkness from the past. Sadness from the past, you know, that we need to reverse field on, right? That we need to overcome, let go of, so that we can move forward, okay? And it said, this comes the hard way, by enduring the ravages of living in a volatile chaos, almost as victim, and then seizing command of your own vessel. Until you do it, the darkness leaks out around the edges and fosters the worst all around, usually triggering so much subtle destruction and indulgence in the negative. Brings you up short, triggers the final reckoning and huge release, sending darkness on its way and opening a space for light to flood through and start a new cycle. Okay. So I think that's what I like, them together. New ideas about how we can behave after this point, but still stuck in the past, which is dark and negative and overwhelming, and we need to get rid of this heavy, dark past experience that we've had and transform it, really, especially because this lunar month started in Scorpio, and transform it so that we can come out on the other side lighter, more hopeful here for a new and different and better experience, okay, that's going on. And the old way of doing things is big, right, heavy. The new way is lighter or simpler. Right? So I think that's what I want to go with there. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull your card. Sure. Maybe another thought here while I'm getting your card, because Mercury is now in pre-retrograde shadow, and I think we're having some big issues here, understanding our situation and figuring out what we want to do. I recommend not making any firm decisions here about your situation till January. I think January you will have decisions to make. I think, you know, this full moon is square Saturn. here, but I would hold off on making them until January to the best that you can, because I'm just not sure that we're going to make the best ones beforehand. And if you do have to make a decision before January, make it tentative, something you can get out of if you needed to, if new information here or a new thought were to come to light. Okay, now your card here is the Seven of Pentacles upright, and at the bottom of the deck here, we've got the Sun reversed here going on, okay? What do I want to say here? You know, the Sun is about happiness and joy, and I think in some ways does correlate to ease and simplicity here, and it's reversed, indicating that happiness, joy, ease, and simplicity is hard to tap into. And the Seven of Pentacles to me is a lot about, you know, keeping on the path you've already been on, and like tilling the garden, working hard, you know, and to make sure that everything's going according to plan here. And I'm getting the sense of that's not gonna, you know, that's not gonna work after this point, right? After the Mercury retrograde, we can't keep continuing in life the way we've been doing it for the past 3 years. We got to do it differently, and we have to do it differently in a way that's not so much hard work. You know, like tilling the ground can be hard work. That's not so much hard work, but that's easier, simpler, fun, brighter, and more lighthearted. So that's the thought. What needs to be done next in your life needs to be done very differently than the way you've been doing things before. Simpler, lighter, easier, playful, not hard work, not hard and tough. You got to get rid of that mindset and let it shift here in the ways that it is that you need here for us to move forward. So I think that's all I'm going to say there. I hope that made sense. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you all the best here, and I'll talk to you on the next video.